I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon, and this is episode number 40. Today in the show, we're discussing what to do with your time in these months just after deer season ends. And spoiler alert, there's a lot to do. All right, welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. And, it's January 19th, I think, today. And so we're talking about, what some people call the postseason lull, that time period after most people's hunting seasons are done. And we're, at the farthest point away from the next season that we'll ever be at. So for a lot of people, it's kind of a lull. But what me and Dan want to talk about today is the fact that really, it shouldn't be a lull. There are a lot of things we can be doing to prepare for the next season, the 2015 season in this case. So that's what we're going to talk about. But before we do that, Dan, how are you over there?
I'm doing great. Let me just say one thing, though, Mark.
Yeah?
We have done 40 episodes of Wired to Hunt.
Isn't that crazy?
That's nuts. I feel like we just started it.
It's gone really fast. Like when we started, it was just this idea that had been incubating for a long time, and I remember I think I sent you an email or a text or something. It was like, hey, I've got this podcast idea. I think you'd be a good person to do it with, and I don't know. It all kind of came from that.
Now we're media moguls.
I won't go that far. But we're something, I guess. I don't know. A couple idiots on the air, maybe. Maybe that's right. A more accurate way to say it.
Right. I agree with the later.
Yeah. Also, by the way, you sound really good. You sound different than usual, Dan. What happened?
Well, through some brainstorming and a couple comments on, I believe it was the iTunes account saying, hey, Dallas sounds like he's in a bathroom. Well, finally, we put our two brains together to make one, and we figure out that I'm not even recording using the microphone that I have on my desk. So the 40th episode is the very first time I've ever recorded using this microphone. So,
and it cracks me up because I just see you with your face in this microphone for 39 hours, and not once has it actually been working.
Oh boy, I feel like a dumbass. I hate to say it.
Live and learn, and learn. And look at that, with one click of a button, we've totally changed what people think about the podcast, because now you don't sound like you're sitting on the toilet the whole time.
Exactly. That would be hilarious if it actually changed my voice and I sounded like this.
Now, here's the issue. What if people don't like what you really sound like now? And
exactly.
They give up on the podcast.
God. He is so annoying.
We'll have to see if there's any new feedback that comes in.
Yeah, go back to the old way.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. But I'm glad we got that figured out because, you sound much clearer and, better. So
my mom always said I had a beautiful voice.
What did you say? The voice of a school child? Was that it?
Yeah, the voice of a schoolboy.
I don't know if I can. I don't know if I go that far, but
Let's start talking about deer.
yeah, I know we probably should. Man, I don't know. Like you said, it's the podcast's 40 episodes now, and when we started, it was all talking about the 2014 season and everything we were doing leading up to the 2014 season, and now that's done. Now it's a whole new year, and we're kind of starting this whole new process over again. And what I think will be pretty cool this year is that last year we didn't get to start our conversations and our stories until late spring, but now we can really talk about an entire year, an entire season. And I think you're just like me in that deer hunting isn't defined by the hunting season that the state puts forward. It's not October 1st through December 31st for me. It's January 1, 2015 through December 31st, 2015. That it's really a whole year of work and of dreaming and thinking and putting all these pieces together till you're actually then during the official hunting season. So this is an interesting time of year. I think a lot of people kind of fade away from deer hunting at this time, but I hope coming out of our conversation here today, Dan, that more people will remember that, hey, there's some things we can be doing, some things we can check off the list.
Yep. And I actually just wrote a blog about this and basically said that the next, 60 days from the time the seasons end until, till shed season really starts to rock and roll, there's plenty of stuff to do, in and out of the timber to, help you improve your chances for the next season.
Yeah. Yep, so true. And that's exactly what I want to talk about here today. I really want to dive into some of the different things that you're doing, some of the things I'm doing, talk through some high level tips for each one of those different categories of what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it, and hopefully put a couple new ideas in some people's heads that they can go out into the woods or wherever they need to go to do it and make some things happen. Because I really do think, I really believe that the quote-unquote secret to killing deer or killing big deer, whatever it is you're trying to do, isn't a secret. It's really just doing the work. It's actually putting in all the hours and the time and effort to do these things before the season, leading up to the actual hunts, that put you in that position to have success, and that work starts now. So that's,
we all love to be lucky every once in a while, and the old saying, I'd rather be lucky than good, but there really is no secret. I really can't, agree with you more when you say that.
Yeah, that's the truth. So how about we start going through some of these different things that we're working on right now and kind of give our 2 cents on it all.
Let's rock and roll.
Awesome. So I think, for me, one of the biggest things at this time of year, January into February, even into March, would be scouting. Postseason scouting is something that's tremendously important. It's something that a lot of guys don't think about scouting typically until just before the hunting season. Lots of people all of a sudden start gearing into deer hunting season. In late summer, they realize, the season's coming. They start shooting their bows, do some scouting, hang their stands. But really, if you want to really take advantage of the best time to scout, it's this late winter, early spring time period when you can, start seeing some things that you wouldn't see in the summer. So I've got a couple thoughts on postseason scouting, but I'm curious, Dan, do you put any, are you scouting at this time of year? If so, how and why?
So when I scout this time of year, let's say, for example, this weekend I went out and I set up, I put some trail cameras back out and I put a giant pile of corn out. And then I had my trail cameras over top of this pile of corn. And before you do that, you should check your state regulations to make sure that you can, in fact, do that. Iowa, you can. And so now that the season's over, the reason I wanted to do that was to get an inventory of what deer made it through the shotgun season and the entire season. But as far as scouting is concerned, while I was doing that, I also took down 2 tree stands. But while I was doing that, there's just a little bit of snow on the ground, and you can see very clearly where the beds are this time of year. So I made a couple loops through some of my properties looking for beds. I also looked for sign and to try to locate where there might be a a higher concentration of sign on a particular side of the ridge as opposed to different areas on the farm. So the two things that I really look for would be beds. I look for sign, and then because there's no leaves on the tree, I like to get to a high elevation, and I like to actually look at the terrain without anything blocking it. And it's, being in the timber and looking at terrain is a lot different than looking at it on a map. So you can get a good idea of travel corridors, pinch points, just from standing at the highest point on your property and looking through the emptiness, with no leaves. So those are three things that I really like to concentrate on.
Yeah, that's a good point. Something I hadn't necessarily thought about, but makes a lot of sense is the visual advantage you have at this time of year. And I think the other 2 points you made about what you're looking for, especially with that snow, is really helpful because there's a value to doing some scouting when there's still some snow on the ground, which might be right now for a lot of people. And then there's some unique things that you can see just after the snow melts. And so I like to make sure I do a little bit of scouting at both time periods. So when there's snow on the ground, just like you said, you can see some of these things a little bit better. So for example, you can identify what food sources are really being tore up right now because it's very easy to see, if deer are moving through a snow-covered field. And, when you're scouting at this time of year, some things you need to realize are dependent on the time of year. So a food source right now, if we see where deer are feeding right now, mark that as, hey, this is a great late season food source, but don't take this data and then think it will apply to your September deer hunting because those food sources change. But it's still great to know, okay, I've identified a spot that really is getting hit during the late season. And then you can apply that knowledge, in December next year or whatever it might be. I also like to look for, like you said, bedding areas, which are great things to really be able to see with the late season cover down, the leaves down and the snow on the ground. But again, to a degree, bedding areas change from early season to late season, so keep all that in mind. But, one thing that tends to stay relatively consistent would be, where the doe bedding areas are going to be. And you can really tell a doe bedding area is different than a buck bedding area because you're going to see a cluster of a bunch of beds. You're going to see 4 or 5 or 6 beds all in a group, lots of times in kind of a circle facing outwards. And so when I see that, and you can really easily see that in the snow, okay, I know this is going to be a common doe bedding area. And in a lot of cases, you'll see those doe bedding areas stay the same throughout most of the year. Not always, but many times. And then again, when it comes to those buck bedding areas, that's something that is going to be totally different from a doe bedding area, and that's something we can talk about later too, and we've talked about to a degree in some other podcasts, but I'm definitely looking for those things. And then to your point about just seeing how deer are using certain areas, I always like to see just the concentration of travel and how they use terrain. This time of year, it's just so easy to see those trails where deer are moving, and it really points out some things that you typically would just know or you would think, but when you see it laid out there in the snow illustrated so perfectly, it just kind of brings it all to a head. For example, there's a couple spots on one of my Michigan properties that I was walking recently, and you can just see how almost all of the travel going through this kind of, well, right now it's a field that's been plowed under, but all the travel going through this field goes through this low spot where there's 2 ridges on either side of it and it drops down low. And you see, every trail, anything that comes through funnels right into that low spot. And you can just see how, these terrain features really, really do change how deer move. And seeing that illustrated in the snow just makes it very clear. So I love to walk around this time of year just to see that and to confirm, I think that the deer will be using this saddle most of the year. And then, oh yeah, now I see in the snow perfectly, yep, they really are using this saddle or whatever it might be. It's a great time to confirm what the terrain should be doing and how it is. So,
and one thing I would recommend to anybody out there would be maybe even take a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen with you when you're out there, because a lot of this stuff that happens now, you may forget about it if you don't document it. I like to take a little note, and it's just something as big as a piece of paper. And I did this last year where I went and I put a Post-it note inside one of my trail cameras, and I left a note to myself basically saying, hey, put this trail camera at this location because it looked like there was a good amount of sign and movement. So that's where I put my trail camera this year. And it's if I never would have done that, I would have forgot and maybe put it somewhere else and not caught that activity. So, some documentation and little notes to yourself about what is out there and where you may want to set a tree stand or trim a tree stand out in the late summer could help you harvest a mature buck.
That's so true. It's something that I always talk about of how important it is to take notes and document these things because, inevitably you're going to forget a lot about it and mark these things on maps. And I always, I never take as much of my advice as I wish I would in this case. I always try, but I end up forgetting it one day or I don't quite write enough or whatever it is. But I need to keep working on that too because, like you said, it's so easy to forget a lot of that stuff. And having it all laid out, especially if you have several years worth of this kind of information, when you start looking back at it and you have it all laid out there, written out, and you've got all those pieces of the puzzle, you can start seeing patterns and you can start seeing things at a higher level that kind of all come together and help you see bigger picture ideas that will be important about how deer are using your property. That if you just notice something one day, kind of tap it in your head and say, okay, I remember that. But you're never able to put all those things together if it's not all laid out in a journal or, some way of documenting it. So,
right.
That's
it makes a lot
important.
of sense. I mean, it's like we always say, the more information you have, the better.
It's just, and again, that's why I love deer hunting so much is because it's just a giant puzzle. And, you're never going to be able to put the whole puzzle together unless you actually have the piece of the puzzle sitting in front of you. And if you're seeing these puzzle pieces and then, they disappear out of your head 2 weeks later, you're never going to be able to put it all together. So I really think it's important to get these pieces, confirmed in a place where you can see it, think through it, and put them together. So that's an important piece. Stepping back to the scouting side, though, once you start getting some snow melt, which is, maybe not right now for some states, but plenty of states I'm sure don't have snow right now, or I'm having a little bit of a warm up here in Michigan, so we're losing a lot of our snow. Getting that scouting just after snow melt is super important too, and I think we'll probably have a full episode devoted just to postseason scouting again, because I think there's a lot of important things here. But making sure to take advantage of that time just after snow melt, but before grain up, when you can see, scrapes from the past year, you can see rubs from the past year, you can see trails that might have been from the early season or the rut now that the snow is gone. All of that can be really helpful in setting up strategies for that portion of the year too. So I think a long story short here is that, this is not a time to sit in your house for all of January and February because there's a lot of good scouting to be done right now. So, make sure you're out there looking for things, learning things, and making sure you take note of that to use at a later time.
That's a fact.
So what else? We're scouting this time of year. What else are you doing, Dan?
Well, for me, whether I see up here cleaning and organizing, I'm going through all my gear. I'm doing research on gear that I want to use next year. Seeing if the stuff I have is still good enough to make it to the next year. For example, this upcoming year, I'm going to have to purchase some new tree strand straps because my other ones are getting frayed and weathered. So I'm going to have to do that. I also am the kind of guy, I like to have the newest and greatest thing. Whether my budget allows that or not is another thing. So I'm doing research now of, what broadheads, is there anything that caught my attention? What reviews are people doing? And, grunt calls, always looking for that next piece of equipment that may increase my odds. But as we talk about, a lot of that stuff just is, I don't know. Me and you are kind of set in our ways as it is anyway. But anytime there's a new product that I feel can perform better than my current product, I'm all for that.
Yeah, it can't hurt to, stay abreast of what's out there, and sometimes
Right.
there's new things to add to the arsenal.
Yep.
Speaking of things, I just saw this somewhere. I never noticed it while we were at the ATA show, but there's a new expandable broadhead with I think this is right, a 5-inch cutting diameter.
What?
Yeah, it's crazy. I'm pretty sure that's what I saw.
5 inches?
5 inches, like massive expandable blades.
I just don't see that working that well.
Yeah, I have no
Just
idea.
because of how, having awesome wound channel is awesome, but then too big of blades will prevent penetration. So I don't know. I'm going to look that up.
Yeah, check it out. I just saw this in passing somewhere, so I could be completely wrong on it, but I'm pretty sure I saw like 1 7/8 cut on contact, and then I really think it said 5 inches on expansion. And I shouldn't even say which brand I think it is because I might be wrong, but I think it was Dead Ringer. But disclaimer, I could be completely wrong on that. I just saw something when I was browsing around online about it, so we'll have to check it out later. But that's one of those things that was pretty interesting.
Next thing you know, they're just going to be throwing machetes out of the tree at them.
Yeah, I know. At what point is too much? Is it too
Right.
much? We'll find out, I guess. But yeah, gear definitely is an important thing this time of year. Especially now that the ATA show and SHOT Show and all those big conventions, all the new products are being announced. It's kind of fun to see what's out there. And I know you and me are kind of similar on this. I think it's a point worth making, and it could be a really long rant, so I won't make it that way. But with outdoor television and outdoor magazines and even Wired to Hunt, right? There's advertising on all of it. And, manufacturers have to get the word out about their products, which is good. And, of course, all the companies want to say the good things about their products, which is great. I understand that. I think it's important just for all of us to remember, like, 2 things. Number one, there's some good things out there. And like we just said, it's great to stay abreast of what's new, find what's right for you, upgrade your gear as needed, because there's definitely going to be times when there's a piece of gear or clothing or whatever it might be that can really make a difference for you. And so I'm all for that, and I upgrade my gear a lot. But I just think it's also important to again say, you don't always need to go buy the latest, greatest, fanciest thing. Of course, there's some things out there that I do and I like, so I'm guilty of this, and I think it's a good thing sometimes. But just don't feel like you always have to do that, because in the end, gear is really helpful. It's great to have, good quality gear helps a ton. But in the end, it comes down to you, to how you're hunting, to the work you're putting in. So I guess the whole point of this is don't ever feel like you can't be successful if you don't have X item. And I'll never say that about, there'll be certain products I like and I'll recommend, but I'm never going to tell you have to have this to be successful, because that's just not true. So I guess just keep that in mind, this coming season, when you're thinking about the new year, when you're looking at new gear, what you want to buy, what you can afford. Lots of good stuff out there, lots of stuff that's worth the money, but there's lots of stuff that maybe you don't absolutely have to have. So
I'll put it to you this way. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's all right.
But if you have $100 at the end of the season or at the beginning of the season, and you're debating on what piece of equipment to buy, that $100 would be better spent on your wife or girlfriend before the season started than it would on any other piece of equipment that you had. So that would allow you more hunting time through brownie points.
There's probably a lot of truth to that. So yeah, just something to think about. I mean, I'm still going to go out there and buy some new gear, because there's lots of cool stuff out there. But, it's not going to make or break your season in a lot of cases. So
now, a lot of you guys are familiar with the old hunting tradition of eating, some organ, the heart or a chunk of liver off the first animal you kill. I had that when I was a little kid, and it was a big deal. Organ meats were always prized by frontier people who knew the importance of getting a lot of different minerals and nutrients. And as often is the case, those guys were onto something, because organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. And you can get the same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil, made exclusively from regeneratively raised, grass-fed, and finished cattle. Heart and Soil's unique freeze-drying process means all those important nutrients are trapped in, ensuring you experience every one of the benefits of nature's superfood in a clean, convenient, taste-free capsule. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And make sure to use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. That's heartandsoil.co. Use the code MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
Nonetheless, it's good to check your current gear that you have too, right? I have made the mistake sometimes where the season ends and like I'm just done. Like it's a freezing cold, it's New Year's Eve, freezing cold, tons of snow. I get in from the hunt, I throw my stuff in the barn, and I don't touch it for like weeks or a month or whatever it is. And then I'm halfway guilty of that right now, actually. There's a bunch of stuff that I just have sitting in my barn still I haven't touched since I got done hunting with it. But sometimes you can really get screwed because of that. Yeah. I have a perfect example of a time I did this, which is just stupid. It's just plain stupid. I was out there with my muzzleloader on the last night of the season, and I shot a couple does. This was like 3 years ago or 2 years ago. And I came in, was dealing with the does, and, didn't even think about the fact that I had left my muzzleloader in the barn with all my other gear, and I didn't think about cleaning it for like 2 months or longer. I can't remember what it was, but it was a very long time, and I completely forgot about it. And by the time I finally remembered, it was completely corroded, rusted out, couldn't get the breech plug out. In the end, I had to trash it because it was so far gone and completely almost rotted. So that was, a very expensive mistake that I made there. So I've learned that lesson, but hopefully, I'm sure a few other people have probably made the same mistake too. But it's just important to check those things. Clean your guns, check your bow, put all your gear back where it belongs, put things back in place, and deal with it now. And this is hard to do sometimes, right? Because we're just tired. But it's a lot easier to deal with gear issues now rather than, September, you're about to head out for the first day of the hunt, and you realize, oh, crap, I totally forgot to do X with my bow or whatever it might be. So now's a good time to deal with it.
Clean it, It's season's over. You don't need to worry about scent. I mean, on some of my tree stands, I'll take it to the car wash, throw them all in the back of my truck and just blast them, and even use soap on them and clean them up and then hang them up for the year. I mean, I don't care what kind of coating they have on it. If it sits in dirt and crud all year round, it's not good for it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, to the point of tree stands, it's like you said, it's a really good time of year to check the straps on your trees and tree stands. And in a lot of cases, you should just take your tree stands down so that those straps don't get worn out or possibly chewed by squirrels or whatever might happen. And I'm guilty of it too. I've left a lot of tree stands hanging for too long. And it'd be smart of me to pull some of those down and just check them, because you don't want to climb up there October 1st and step onto the platform and have it crash down.
Yep.
So
the nuts and bolts too. Some of them have rusted, and every year, somewhere in October or hell, even later in the year, you'll see pictures on Facebook or some kind of social media of somebody, oh, thank God I had my safety harness on. Then they take a picture of a bolt or a cable that was rusted through, and it bent on them and they fell. So that's important.
Yeah, you definitely got to check on that stuff. That's for sure. So we're scouting, we're checking our gear, we're cleaning our gear, organizing our gear, just taking care of it now so we don't need to worry about it later. Another thing that I wanted to touch on again, you mentioned it really briefly when you were talking about what you're doing to scout, but I really think the inventory check thing is a pretty important thing this time of year.
Oh, yeah.
Getting your trail cameras out, and if it's legal in your state, putting some kind of attractant out in front of it that gets, the deer in front of your camera so you can see, who made it through the season, who's going to be back in the next year. Because that, just from understanding how your deer herd is going to evolve, that's important. And then just from a purely, fun standpoint, it's nice to know who's going to be around. and see, sometimes I've had new deer move into the area at the very end of the season. So it's good to catch that now too. So I like to put those types of cameras on a late season food source if I have it. So in a lot of cases, like right now, I've got a great big Whitetail Institute wintergreens food plot with turnips and stuff like that. So the deer are hitting that really hard on one of my properties. So I've got a camera out in front of that. So they're already coming there. And then I put an attractant in front of the camera to then take those deer that are in the food plot and make sure they're right in front of my trail camera. And
Yep.
I know you do that with, bringing some corn in too, Dan. So.
Yeah. And that's, literally checking trail cameras is, I guess, other than being in nature, is my favorite thing to do. I love checking trail camera pictures. And, you ask your wife, you ask my wife, you ask, tons of other people's wives or husbands who are addicted like we are, and the hours we spent just clicking through. Hey, is that same buck from last year? I don't know. Let's compare it to this picture. And you go in your files and you pull up a picture from a year or 2 years ago, and you'll say, yeah, that's him. Look, you can tell because he's got a little extra white on this side of his neck. It's like, we're just idiots.
That's the truth. But I love it.
Yeah, I love it.
It's so much fun.
If it wasn't for trail cameras, I honestly don't know if I would be as into hunting as I am.
Oh, it definitely changed things. It
Yeah.
totally changed things for people because all of a sudden you went from, only knowing about the deer that you actually saw to now all of a sudden seeing the potential of all these other deer that are around there that lots of times we never see these deer in person. It's only on trail camera. And it really helps when you're able to start understanding these individual deer too.
Yeah.
So there's a blog post I wrote about this, I think last summer, called The 7 Greatest Dangers of Trail Cameras. And it's related to this very topic. I'll post a link to it in the show notes. If you haven't seen that yet, take a look. It's an important read. Dan, have you seen that one?
I think I have. Yeah. Basically, it's
Don't give it away.
Yeah,
Don't give it away.
okay. I won't. But yes, that is me and you.
Yes, it is. And I imagine a lot of our listeners too. So trail cameras, big thing. And another, a tie-in here to the next topic. Another big reason why I like to have trail cameras out this time of year is because I'm also looking at these pictures to see when the bucks start dropping their antlers.
Yep.
For me, the timing of my shed hunting is really important. And that's something, let's go into detail on that another time. We'll probably have a full episode or two all about shed hunting. But knowing when the antlers are dropping is going to help you time when you start shed hunting. And that's a pretty important thing, I think. And I actually wrote a blog post about that too that we posted on Facebook today. So I can link to that too. But keep the cameras out. Check when those bucks are dropping their antlers. And that's really going to help you, once it comes to shed hunting.
Yeah, buddy. I love shed hunting, but unlike you, I have to rely on specific weekends because this year I have a wedding I have to go to the second weekend in March. So my only really weekends that I'm going to be able to shed hunt this year are either the weekend before or the weekend after. And it's one of those things where depending on how much snow's on the ground, you could just be finding nothing but chewed antlers or no antlers at all. So timing is very critical.
Yeah, man, I'm having issues with my voice.
Going through puberty over there?
It finally hit. It took a while, but I'm finally making it happen. What I was trying to say before I squeaked was, heck, I don't even know what I was going to say. Something about shed hunting.
Timing is everything.
Timing is everything, especially when you hit puberty. That's important. I don't know. But, God, where are we going? Shed hunting.
Live and in person.
Yeah, live in person, the real deal here. Shed hunting, though, right? That's something we will talk about more in the next couple weeks. But for me, at least, I'm really thinking about shed hunting middle of February through the middle of March. It seems that time frame is really, when most of the antlers are going to be on the ground, but also before, there's too much greenery on the ground or before too many antlers get chewed up by squirrels and porcupines and different things like that. So that's a big thing to be doing this time of year too. And we will cover that in a lot more detail. Hopefully Dan here, maybe sometime in mid-February, we'll do an episode all about shed hunting and maybe get some experts on the show. I actually am trying to line up someone who's going to help talk to us a little bit about training a dog to help you find sheds, and some other people that have a lot of experience finding antlers in addition to, what we've done. So that should make for some interesting conversations because, man, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it is.
And
yes, it is.
A lot of good things that can come from finding those antlers too.
Well, the good thing about it is, you have that piece of history with the deer. You also are out there getting some kind of exercise, breathing the fresh air, scouting while you're doing that. And so it's the perfect thing to do. I mean, shed hunting is literally the best way to know your property and find antlers, which are awesome too.
And it's just a nice season to look forward to. Like for me, my year is very season oriented. You've got the deer hunting season to look forward to, or whatever hunting season it is that you're looking forward to. But then this February, March time frame is kind of a dead spot if it weren't for shed hunting. For some people at least. So it's something I can get excited about, and definitely my mind turns to sheds usually once February shows up. I'm really thinking about the bone, and for me, it's a fun excuse to get out and do a couple more trips. We're going to do a trip to Ohio and hopefully another trip to Iowa. So, I think any excuse to find more antlers off your property, Dan, so that you can't have the big ones is a good thing.
You son of a...
Yeah, I got to tell you, I was bummed that you didn't get to go and do any more late season hunting, but I wasn't too sad about the fact you didn't get a shot at Mark Kenyon because I like that antler.
I know. Although I did bump him once this year.
That was during your rut week, right?
Or yep. It was probably somewhere around the 10th or 11th. He was with a doe, and I was going into one of the tree stands that I had set earlier in the week, and sure enough, I bumped him out, and then something happened where right at last light he was coming back in, and he started blowing. So I think I had some swirls or something going on, and I don't know, but then I didn't see him again.
Yeah, he's a smart old buck. He takes after his namesake.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
At least I'd like to think so. Which something we just talked about, they're planning shed hunting trips ties into another thing I like to do this time of year, which is working on planning my actual hunting trips. Mm-hmm. For me, I do a lot of traveling for my hunting since, my home properties here in Michigan are okay, but I do like to get out of state a good bit. So I think this time frame, January, February, March, is a great time to start planning that because you've got plenty of time to, take care of any contingencies, figure things out, do additional research, maybe do some scouting if you can. And it's also a great time of year to be figuring this out now so that you have time to, go and figure out access. If you have to ask for permission, I'd like to make my plans now so that I've got, plenty of time to go ask permission, to scout, to do the work. You don't want to be doing this in August when the hunting season's almost here. So I spend a lot of time thinking through, thinking through the states I want to hunt, thinking through, do I need to buy preference points? A lot of states, if you're going to hunt, Iowa or Kansas or Illinois, these states, require that you apply for your licenses in the spring. So you need to have planned that trip and be ready for it beforehand. So that's another good reason to be figuring all those things out now. It's also just a good, fun way to keep yourself engaged with hunting while you're stuck inside on a really cold, snowy, blustery day. I spend lots of time looking at maps, going on Google Earth, and just staring at these things or studying plat maps and parcel borders and picking out this property and that property and if I could hunt that one and if I could hunt that one. I don't know. Do you do that?
Mark, I'll be honest with you. If they were going to have an intervention for me on something, it wouldn't be booze or drugs. It would be Bing Maps or Google Maps or parcel, like to find out who the owner of that particular property is. I spend so much time. It's ridiculous how much time I spend on those websites.
Yeah, I guilty too. Another thing I like to do in addition to that, I don't do this as much as some of my friends, but I like to go and look at properties for sale. So like I'll go to Whitetail Properties website and just look at all the different properties in Iowa and kind of dream about, ooh,
Oh,
I'd like to
yeah.
love that. I'd like that property. Or if I only had $1.5 million, I'd buy that property.
Exactly. And then you dream about, man, how could I get that?
Right. And then before you know it, Dan, you're robbing banks.
Exactly. Hey, don't put it past me.
No, I wouldn't. If anyone would do it, unfortunately, it might be you.
So why did you do it, Mr. Johnson? I wanted whitetail property.
Yeah, we've got an issue, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah. So looking at properties is important. And that's another piece, in addition to, planning the trips is actually looking at the properties and determining, which new properties you want to hunt next year. And we talked about this in one of our episodes back in the summer, I think, about gaining hunting permission.
Yep.
I'll make sure to link to that in this show notes. But I think it's really important to try to pick the properties that you want to hunt in the future now, because one of the best tips, that you and I have both used in the past is to actually, find those properties and then go ask for shed hunting permission this time of year, or when you want to go shed hunting, because you can establish that relationship. You're more often going to get a yes when it comes to shed hunting than you might get when you ask for deer hunting. But if you can say, hey, I'd love to walk your property, look for some antlers, that's kind of low risk, and it's far away from hunting season. So they're, in many cases, landowners are like, yeah, sure, you can walk for the day. And then by doing that, right, you get to show, you're respectful, you didn't do anything bad to their property, you'll have another excuse to talk to them some more, build a little bit of a relationship there. And, oh, by the way, you also get to scout the property while you're looking for sheds too.
Yep.
And so it really is like the best thing you can do when it comes to trying to, at least I think so, and when it comes to trying to gain hunting permission is try to get shed hunting permission. It's a great way to start it. So you have to go and find those properties now so that you can go and ask for shed hunting permission, in a month or so.
And what I've learned, it's all about trust. The landowner has to be able to trust you on their property, whether it's to close a gate behind you or, leave things as they were when you go and come, when you're going and coming from these properties, and that you're a good person and that you're there for the right reasons. And, because a lot of these times, if you do get permission, it's one chance and you're done. So,
yeah.
So I mean that's just mine in the past, my experience in the past. So, like you said, this is the perfect time to do that because right now the farmers, unless they have livestock, the farmers, they're not as busy as they're going to be in the spring and as they are in the fall. So, I mean, right now, other than, if they have odd jobs that they have to do, a farmer's always busy, but they're less busy this time of year than they are any other time of year.
Yeah. Yep, that's definitely the case. And it's it's another fun thing to do. Keeping your mind engaged in this kind of thing this time of year. And I guess for a quick, we might have talked about this before, but I want to make sure to point out something that I think has been very helpful for both you and me, Dan, is using, online maps to find these properties. And so, like we talked about, using Google Maps to look at an area, we've driven by a spot that looks really bucky, great swamp or whatever it is, but you can go on Google Maps, see, okay, here's the terrain I want to hunt. I love this area. And then most counties have online GIS maps, which are essentially the database, the maps for that county that show the parcel borders and the landowner information. And so what I do is, for whatever county I'm hunting, I just go to Google and I search, X county GIS maps. And almost always you're going to find a link that you can click to, and it'll allow you to pull up that map, and then you can take a look at, all the property borders overlaid over an aerial image of, that area. So you can see, okay, specifically I'm interested in hunting this property, this one, and you can get the name and address for all those landowners, and then you're set to go out there during shed season, knock on their doors, hopefully get permission, and then the whole process starts there. But using these new digital resources makes it a lot easier, especially if you're trying to hunt somewhere out of state, because in the past, if you want to get that property information, you had to buy a plat map. Some people would mail it to you, but in some cases you might actually have to be in that county to go to the courthouse and find whoever sells it and buy the physical book, which is a pain in the butt if you live in Michigan and you're trying to hunt in Iowa. So now you can get it almost all of it digitally, and is really easy.
And I just want to take a step backwards for a moment and talk about getting permission. Another thing, here's a tip: if you have permission to a certain property, and this is what I have done in the past. You say, okay, you go up to the landowner and you let them know, hey, I already have permission to hunt here, whether they're friends or not. The two landowners are friends. They know that, okay, so if so and so lets them hunt, then maybe I'll hunt, because this is what I've found, that if the bigger area that you get and the bigger chunk that are touching, the better. Because I have a couple properties where it's a small parcel and then a piece of property between it and then another small parcel, and if I had that entire section, it would make it easier for me to, pattern some of these deer. So that's one thing. The second thing would be to ask about access. It doesn't, let them know, hey, if you're not going to let me hunt here, would it be possible if I use your farm road to get back to the property to make it so you don't have to walk as far and cast your scent over some of these properties? So I do have a property where I only am allowed to park on it and walk through it, or walk on this road, and that's it. So that's just another thing to be aware of when you're asking for permission.
That's a really good idea. That's a great point, because, again, something that so many people overlook, and I've overlooked it at times too, is just, getting lazy about your access. And if you can improve your access and exit routes, that can really change how a property hunts.
Yeah, that's
so,
a fact.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned it to you back in December, but I had a late season hunt in Indiana, and I couldn't access it the way I usually did because the creek had flooded. So I couldn't get through, but I was able to ask for permission to access from the other side, and that ended up being a much better access route in general.
Yep.
So that might be something, if I were going to hunt there in the future, I would just try to establish that with a landowner again to be able to access from that side, because it gets you in there without disturbing a lot of the other parts of the property. So I like where your head's at. Good thought, Dan.
Yep.
All right, so what else are we doing this time of year? Something I'm doing now, and I'm really doing this all year, but especially now, given the weather, given I'm not doing as much outside as I typically am, during hunting season or during the summer, is I'm doing a ton of learning and reading and researching. As I've admitted before, I'm a huge book nerd. So this time of year, I'm devouring books, lots of stuff related to hunting, lots of how-to books, lots of, more deeper hunting related books. I'm researching, some of the things we talked about, like specific areas to hunt or properties to hunt, but I'm also just researching, I'm always trying to learn. I think one of the biggest things when it comes to being a deer hunter is realizing that you can never stop learning. There's always something new to learn. There's always new ideas, new concepts, new ways to evolve our understanding of white-tailed deer. And that's a big reason why I love it so much, is because it's something that I'm so fascinated with, and I know I will never have it all figured out. So I'm just constantly trying to find a little extra here or understand one more thing here. So I don't know about you, but this time of year, I'm just devouring content, reading magazines, reading books. I'm on blogs, reading different things all the time. Hopefully, for other people out there, what they're finding on Wired to Hunt is helping them in that standpoint or from that standpoint. But there's lots of other good stuff out there too.
Now, a lot of you guys are familiar with the old hunting tradition of eating, some organ, the heart or a chunk of liver off the first animal you kill. I had that when I was a little kid, and it was a big deal. Organ meats were always prized by frontier people who knew the importance of getting a lot of different minerals and nutrients. And as often is the case, those guys were onto something, because organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. And you can get the same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil, made exclusively from regeneratively raised, grass-fed, and finished cattle. Heart and Soil's unique freeze-drying process means all those important nutrients are trapped in, ensuring you experience every one of the benefits of nature's superfood in a clean, convenient, taste-free capsule. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And make sure to use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. That's heartandsoil.co. Use the code MeatEater. There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today.
Yeah, it's for me, it's almost a bit hypocritical, but I'm not really into. I do occasionally read a story of another hunter, but what I like to devour this, and you nailed it when you said the word evolve. I like to read on science, why an animal does the things they do, what makes a specific predator better at killing an animal than another predator, or how a deer's nose work, how their glands work, what is the trigger for the rut, what is background on moon phases, all that kind of scientific evidence or hypothesis and all that kind of stuff is what really gets me going.
Yeah, that stuff's fascinating.
Yeah.
And then, a couple magazines, there's a lot of good, hunting magazines out there. But a couple do, have, standard sections related to biology. Quality Whitetails has a lot of great content when it comes to the biology and science of deer. And they also, and as I think most people know, Quality Whitetails is the magazine published by the Quality Deer Management Association. They also release something in end of January, early February called the Whitetail Report every year. So the 2015 Whitetail Report, I think, will be available in a week or two. And usually that really goes into some interesting details in regards to current whitetail trends with populations and harvests and different things like that. But then also they dive into some different things with other studies and research about deer. It's always pretty fascinating. So I'd recommend people check out the Whitetail Report. Like I said, in a couple weeks it'll be available, and if you just Google 2014 Whitetail Report or 2015 Whitetail Report, that's a good one to get that kind of info, Dan. I don't know if you've ever been able to take a look at that, but I've always been interested in it.
Yep. And here's something that's kind of weird, and don't think I'm actually going to murder another person, but my wife watches a lot of murder mysteries and Dateline and 2020s and all those things. So the other night she was watching something on a serial killer, and they finally caught this guy, and they're asking him, how'd you get away with all these things? And he's like, it's crazy coming from the mouth of a serial killer, but it's kind of like we are the same when hunting deer. Use some of the same principles. He's like, the more I know about the person that I'm going to kill, the easier it was for me to do it. So you translate that into deer hunting, and the more information you know about how a deer acts, what his patterns are, what he does, in certain times a year, it's going to become easier for you to put together a game plan to try to harvest that animal.
Yeah, that's a great point, but a super creepy way to get to it. But you're absolutely right. You gotta understand your prey. You gotta understand your quarry, and now is a great time to really dive into that. Another plug here I'd like to make. I think a lot of us really like how-to articles. Different tips and tactics for how to be a better hunter. It's makes a lot of sense to read things like you're just talking about, the research about deer and better understand our prey. But I would really encourage everyone to do a little reading or thinking about hunting from a different standpoint. And maybe I'm a little bit of a romantic on this, but the philosophical or ethical or moral standpoint of hunting. I think that I think it's a good idea for everyone to think about the ethics of hunting. And sometimes look at how you hunt, and examine the ethics of what your hunting ethic is, because I think that's something that evolves, or at least should evolve, and everyone should at least be thinking about that. Why you hunt, how you hunt, what these things mean. Are you going about it the right way? We're all going to draw different lines in the sand, but I think it's very important to at least be thinking about that and cognizant of that. And there's a book that I read last year that really helped me to do this. It really made me ask questions about myself, to think about, why do I do this? How do I do this? Am I doing this in the best way possible? Am I doing, the animal the service that should be done? Am I respecting it the proper way? And it was a really good book for me to read, to ask these questions, to think about these things. And it's called A Hunter's Heart. And it's a series of essays that are collected by a guy named David Peterson. He wrote one essay, but there's another like 40 or 45 articles or essays or chapters devoted to all sorts of different things related to hunting. But it's more of the deeper side of hunting. So it's asking the questions of why we do it, or why and how do we do it, or the ethics of different pieces and parts of it. And it's just a good read to challenge you as a hunter and as a person to think through these concepts, because when it comes right down to it, hunting is it's a serious thing. Like, we are going out there and we are hunting an animal, and we are killing an animal. We are taking a life. And I think that's something that it's not trivial. It's not something to be taken lightly. It's not something that should be thought of as, as just a game or something, fun to kind of go out and do. It's, of course we enjoy hunting, but it's a very serious type of thing. And I think it's important to have that respect for it and to think through it in those ways. So I'd really encourage everyone to take a look at that book if you get a chance. It's called A Hunter's Heart. It does a nice job of presenting a lot of different thoughts and opinions and viewpoints on hunting that really got me thinking. And I think if everyone read that book, and at least, you're not going to agree with everything, but at least allow yourself to be open to these ideas and just to think through these things yourself, I think we would all be better for it. So yeah, that's my little plug.
It's pretty cool once you realize that hunting is not just camo and bow and all this stuff. And if you can let your mind absorb the spiritual side of it too, it just adds that much more enjoyment to the actual process, I guess, that is hunting.
Yeah. There's so much more to it. I think a lot of us start out, as kids, dad or grandpa or uncle or a friend gets you out there hunting, and at that point, you're just trying to wrap your head around the basics. What do I got to do to see a deer, or what do I need to do to kill a deer? And at that point, it's just kind of the surface level stuff. There's a deer, here's a gun, how do I shoot it, how do I kill it? But I think as we age, we begin to think through more of these things about the deeper aspects of it. And like you said, for some people, almost the spirituality of it, or the whatever it might be for you. It's a really deep thing, and it's something that I think for me, it's really at the core of who I am, and digging into that and thinking about that, and I don't know, just having these types of conversations, whether it be with other people or kind of internally with yourself, I think it helps you grow as a hunter and as a person, and it's an important thing to do. So whether it be with a book or just thinking about these things yourself, I'd encourage everyone to try to do that in these next couple weeks during this kind of the heart of winter. It's a good time to do that kind of thinking.
Yep, for sure.
I guess moving on from our deep piece there, there's two more things I think we want to touch on, Dan. And I'll touch on one, and then I'll let you touch on the second, because I think you are particularly fond of doing this. I think we all should be. But fitness is something that I think a lot of hunters should be thinking about at this time of year. I'm not going to try to say that everyone needs to be, an Iron Man to be a successful deer hunter. You don't need to be, Cameron Hanes to kill deer. But it is a good thing to sharpen that tool, because when it comes right down to it, as we talked about, there's all these different pieces of the puzzle when it comes to being able to hunt a deer, and there's all these different tools you can use, and your body, your physical body, is one of those tools that is, part of the entire equation when it comes to hunting. When you're walking to your tree stand, when you're drawing your bow, when you're out there in the cold, all these different things, you will be able to perform those tasks better if your body is in tune. if you are making sure it's as optimal as possible. So, I'm not going to say that everyone needs to be working out every day of the week and, be weightlifting and eating protein or drinking protein shakes every day. But, I think I just encourage everyone to think about different ways to try to, improve their physical fitness a little bit. And if you're really into it, that's awesome. I think the more, the better. I'm certainly trying to do that as best as possible, given my deer hunting and elk hunting and trying to do some bear hunting this year and a bunch of different things where it really does require you be physically ready for that. But now is a great time of year to get into it if you aren't already. My issue, Dan, I don't know if you're like this, but my biggest challenge is that I'm pretty good about staying relatively in shape and working out when it comes to the winter months, February, March, April, even into the summer when I'm out running or doing different things outside. But once hunting season hits, for me, like once deer hunting season starts, I stop doing all my other workout, routines and stuff, and I'm just hunting and working. And I always fall into this hole where I did really good all year leading up to it, and then for 4 months I'm just a turd. I don't work out. I eat like crap. I have horrible sleeping habits. And then when it comes back to the winter again, after the deer season, I'm trying to start working out again. Then I'm just killing myself because I should have stuck with it. So I wish, in the future, I'm going to try to do better to kind of stick to some kind of routine. Because I just did one of my more serious workouts just recently after not doing anything all fall. And I am still sore and just struggling.
Yep. The last 2 weeks have been what I call my sore weeks. So I do a lot of heavy lifting and to get the soreness out of the way, and then I'll expand my workouts into other things. But I wanted to make sure that when I went on my Nebraska trip last year, this past fall, that I wasn't going to let my legs determine, that I could or could not go any further than what, my body would allow me. So I worked my legs. Typically people, they don't work their legs. They work those glamour muscles, the curls and the triceps and the chests and whatever. But when it comes to hunting, you're on your legs 90% of the time. So those are the muscle groups that you really got to focus on. And again, with this elk hunt that we're going to be going on this year, I am not going to let my body exhaustion determine not making it to the next hill that I need to be to potentially shoot an elk. And I saw a direct result of that this year when I went out to Nebraska and I was walking 15 miles a day. So I saw that my working out and taking better care of myself, losing weight and all that stuff helped me. And I plan on doing that again this year when we go out in the mountains. And it doesn't help to drop a couple pounds while you're doing it too. So
yeah, for me, I wish I was more motivated to stay in really good shape just from a purely, hey, it's good for you standpoint, or, just get in better shape, keep the wife happy type of deal. But the biggest motivator for me is these hunting trips. Like having a trip like that where I'm going to be hunting, in Idaho for elk, or, hey, I've got deer season coming up and I know I'm going to have to put a tree stand and a 25-pound pack and hike 2 miles back to this spot in public land to hunt. Knowing that is in my future, that's the stuff that gets me out there and gets me running or gets me lifting or doing whatever it is. Like I literally, when I'm running the final minute or the final quarter mile, when you're just huffing trying to get back to the end, I just envision like coming up over a hill towards an elk or having that buck walk in and I'm at full draw for 2 minutes. And like you said, I never want a physical thing, like my lack of effort and work from a physical standpoint, I never want that to be the reason why I can't, reach my goal. And a perfect example for me was this past year with my Ohio buck. I was drawn on that deer for almost 2 minutes straight. And I was at full draw for almost 2 minutes. And if I hadn't been, working hard all spring and summer to make sure I've got some basic shoulder and arm strength, and I'm not a big, terribly super duper strong guy or anything, but just trying to maintain, that ability to handle something like that. If I hadn't been working out and doing anything to work on my shoulders or anything, I don't think I would have been held for 2 minutes, and I wouldn't have gotten that deer. If I wasn't at full draw that entire time without moving, without letting down, that deer would have been gone. But because I was able to stay 2 minutes, not move, stay at full draw, I got that buck. And, that's just one example of how and why that's important, even for a whitetail hunter, even more so if you're hunting other species. So,
right. And I think another good thing that comes out of, physical fitness is mental clarity, because it is a huge stress reliever. And science proves all these things about how, if you work out, it improves your self awareness, or I really don't know what all that mumbo jumbo is about, but you're in really good shape, and that discipline it takes to lift 5 days a week or work out 5 days a week or do all that translates into the patience in the stand. And when the time comes to, it would reduce your buck fever, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I've done some reading on that as well, where the better shape you're in, the less buck fever.
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot of intuitive sense. That would be the case. That's for sure.
Yep. That and it's my stress reliever. I sit in a cubicle all day long, and I can't hit people at my job, so I go out and I push around some heavy weights, and I walk on a Stairmaster or do some running, and that energy gets put towards, I guess, my fitness instead of going to jail.
Yeah, and I think most people are in jobs where they can't hit people too. So this would be a good recommendation for them too.
Yeah, exactly.
This is something, again, if you're not that kind of person that wants to be working out, it's not required. And I'm not trying to say that you need to be doing this kind of thing, but it helps. It really does. So we're hopefully going to be having Cameron Haynes on the show here in the future to discuss this topic in more depth. And for those that don't know, Cameron Haynes is kind of the guy in the hunting world who has really become a spokesman for, trying to, be more physically prepped for the hunt. And he's a big, Western hunter in the mountains and stuff. But I know he does some whitetail hunting and some blacktail deer hunting and things like that. So hopefully we can continue this conversation with him in the near future and get some ideas and ways that we can all become a little bit better physically prepared to deer hunt, in addition to all the different mind games and strategies and things that we put together. So that all being the case, Dan, what is the final thing that we should be doing this time of year as deer hunters?
Kissing our wife's butts.
Yeah.
I mean, this is that time of year where projects, like here this month or next month, I got another kid coming, so that means I got another bedroom to build, whether it's going to be painting, putting together a crib, moving stuff around, doing all of these things because my wife isn't pregnant, or my wife's pregnant now. So household jobs that you've put off for too long, landscaping, that typically would happen in the summer, but anything that's going to allow you more time in the stand, the better. And I'm going to have 2 kids, so I'm going to have to do a lot of, building those brownie points and working my butt off every weekend now, so that when November comes, I can take off as much time as possible. And I know, just like you, I think we talked about this the other day, Mark, is you got to choose your battles. Is it worth going on that overnight or 2-day fishing trip in the summer, or do you want to take those 2 days and use them in the fall? So yeah. Choose your battles wisely.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think that applies to a lot of things. People are like, how can you go hunting all the time? How can you get all this time away? Well, I'm not, because I want to spend this time on these hunting trips and things I'm doing, I'm not going on, other trips with other people doing other things throughout the year. It's, I'm devoting my time either to my wife or to hunting. So I'm sacrificing a lot of other things that my other buddies are doing. I'm not going to, football games. I'm not going to basketball games. I'm not going to Las Vegas. I'm either doing stuff related to hunting, or I'm spending time around the house, helping out, spending time with the wife. And that's a choice that I've made based on priorities. And I think, everyone has to keep that in mind. And everyone's priorities are different. But if you think that you want hunting to be, up towards the top for you, then you do need to sacrifice some things. So That's great stuff to think about. And I think also financially, that's a whole nother thing.
Oh yeah.
But for me, I don't buy pretty much anything other than our basic necessities and stuff related to hunting. I don't buy stuff. I don't buy clothes more than like once a year, a couple basic things, because I've chosen that I want to put my time and money and finances behind a couple things that are important to me, and not a bunch of fancy TVs or video game systems or whatever it might be. And that's just me. Everyone's got their priorities, but I think that now's a good time to think about all those things and plan for it.
Yep.
So.
The dollar bill controls all. And I know that this year I'm going to have to choose wisely what I decide to make my purchases on, because I already know that I'm going to need a little bit different clothing or some different gear for when we go up into the mountains, and that's going to cost money, and I got to plan for it.
Yep, that's the truth. So I think, Dan, that is all the time we've got today. We've kind of been yammering here for a while, and
we covered a lot of things today.
We did. I think a lot of stuff we touched on, and we'll probably dive in deeper on a number of these things in the future. Yep. But hopefully we got some of our listeners' kind of minds turning on some of these things they can start doing at this time of year. January and February it's not a time just to sit in your butt. There's a lot of stuff we can be doing to work towards the 2015 hunting season. So I hope that we got some ideas moving, got some people motivated, and I know this helped me get motivated about some of the things I need to do too. So I think that's going to be it for us, Dan.
Well, we'll see you guys next week.
Yes, we will. And actually today on the Wired to Hunt blog, I actually posted something asking everyone to share with us who you want to hear on the Wired to Hunt podcast this year. So if you didn't already, go to wiredhunt.com, check out that blog post, and leave us your suggestions in the comments section. We want to know who you want to hear from, and I'm going to do everything I can to get those people on the show here in the coming months. So again, you'll go to wiredhunt.com, and if you want to go to the show notes for this one, wiredtohunt.com/episode 40, I'll make sure to have a link to that blog where you can leave your suggestions. We also talked about a number of other blog posts and videos and different resources. I will make sure to have those links at the show notes as well. So again, that's wiredtohunt.com/episode 40. If you haven't already done so, another thing I'd recommend you do is subscribe to the Wired Hunt podcast on whatever podcast app you have on your phone or your tablet. It makes getting these podcasts a lot easier. So if you have an iPhone or iPad, you can get the podcast app. If you have an Android device, you can use the Stitcher app. Make sure to check those out, download them, subscribe to the podcast. That way you'll get our show every week, download it right to your phone or tablet right away. You won't need to think about it, so that when you're driving to work next time, it'll just be there and ready for you. So recommend you do that. As always, we'd also like to thank our partners who help make this show possible. Big thank you to Sitka Gear, Trophy Ridge, Bear Archery, Redneck Blinds, Carbon Express Arrows, Hunt Soft, Lacrosse Boots, Big & J Long Range Attractants, and the Whitetail Institute of North America. And finally, we need to say thank you to you guys, the listeners. Thank you again for getting us to 40 episodes. It's been awesome. I'm glad you guys have been enjoying them. Hopefully we can make the show even better in the future. So thank you for that. And I guess in closing, I know it's easy for you to want to settle into the couch, kind of get lazy. I do it too. But remember, there's a lot to be done still, like we've talked about. There's plenty of work to do here in January and February. So get out there, do the work, dream big for 2015, and of course, always stay wired to hunt.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.